The jungle of Valdris Prime was quiet now. Too quiet. Captain Marcus Chen stepped carefully through the twisted metal and broken trees, his rifle ready. The smell of burned metal and something else filled the air. Something that made his stomach turn. 3 hours ago, his squad had heard the sounds of battle from this valley. Energy weapons firing. Explosions. Screams. Now there was nothing but smoke and death. Marcus had seen many battlefields in his 5 years with the Terran Expeditionary Force. This one was different. The destruction was complete. Pieces of alien technology were scattered everywhere. Strange weapons he had never seen before lay broken on the ground. Blue and green fire still burned in some places. "Stay alert," he whispered into his radio. His 2 squad members were searching the other side of the valley. Something big happened here. He moved between the fallen trees, stepping over chunks of what looked like crystal. The pieces were beautiful, even broken. They caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. But they were covered in silver liquid that Marcus knew was alien blood. The Zephyrian Empire had been at war with humanity for 3 years now. Their soldiers were tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of living crystal. They were fast, smart, and deadly. Earth Command said they were trying to take human worlds for themselves. Marcus had fought them before. He had killed them before. But he had never seen a battlefield like this one. As he climbed over a fallen log, Marcus saw her. The Zephyrian warrior was lying against a boulder, half hidden by broken branches. Her crystal skin was cracked in many places. Silver blood ran from cuts on her arms and face. But she was still breathing. Marcus should have called for backup. Should have secured the area. Should have followed the rules about enemy prisoners. Instead, he found himself moving toward her, his weapon lowered. She was different from other Zephyrians he had seen. Her armor was more complex, covered in patterns that seemed to move when he looked at them. A long cloak spread out beneath her, torn but still showing rich colors. This was not a regular soldier. This was someone important. Near her right hand, just out of reach, lay a sword. Marcus had never seen anything like it. The blade was long and curved, made of the same crystal material as Zephyrian skin, but it was glowing. Soft light moved along its edge like liquid fire. The handle was wrapped in what looked like gold wire, and strange symbols covered the metal parts. The warrior's eyes opened as Marcus got closer. They were like stars, bright and cold and beautiful. For a moment they looked at each other without moving. Marcus expected to see hate in those eyes. He expected her to try to fight or to curse him. Instead, she just looked tired and sad. "Water," she whispered in perfect English. Her voice was like music, even weak as it was. Marcus should not have done it. Everything in his training said no, but he pulled out his water bottle and knelt beside her. He helped her lift her head and gave her small sips. "Thank you," she said after drinking. She tried to sit up and failed. More silver blood ran from a deep cut on her side. Marcus looked around. His squad was still searching the other side of the valley. No one could see him. He pulled out his medical kit and started working on her wounds. "Why?" she asked as he cleaned the cut on her side. "Why help me?" Marcus did not answer right away. He focused on stopping the bleeding, using the same techniques he would use on a human soldier. The alien's blood was thicker than human blood, but it clotted the same way. "Because you needed help," he said finally. The warrior watched him work. Her star-bright eyes never left his face. "You do not know me," she said. "I have killed many of your kind." "Maybe," Marcus said, wrapping bandages around her arm. "But you are not killing anyone right now. Right now you are hurt and need help." She was quiet for a long time after that. Marcus finished with the bandages and gave her more water. The wounds were bad, but she would live if she got to proper medical care soon. "I am Commander Lyrelei of the Third Flame," she said suddenly. "House of the Morning Star, daughter of the High Temple." The names meant nothing to Marcus, but he could hear the pride in her voice. This was definitely someone important, someone who should not be alone in a jungle bleeding and broken. "What happened here?" he asked. Lyrelei's eyes went dark. "We were betrayed. My warriors and I came here to investigate strange readings, energy signatures that should not exist on this world. Instead we found—" She stopped and shook her head. "It does not matter now. They are all dead. I am the last." Marcus looked around at the destruction again. If this had been a battle, where were the human bodies? Where were the human weapons? Something was wrong here. "I need to get you to medical care," he said. "My ship has a medical bay." Lyrelei's eyes went wide. "You would take me as prisoner?" I would take you as someone who needs help, Marcus said. She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. Marcus helped her stand. She was taller than him, even wounded. Her crystal skin felt warm under his hands like stone that had been sitting in sunlight. She leaned against him as they walked, and he could feel her shaking with pain and exhaustion. My sword, she said when they had gone a few steps. I cannot leave it. Marcus looked back at the glowing weapon. It was beautiful, but it was also clearly alien technology. Bringing it aboard his ship was against regulations. But the way Lyrelai looked at it, the desperate need in her voice made him change his mind. I will get it, he said. He settled her against a tree and went back for the sword. As he got closer, he could feel something strange. The air around the weapon felt thick, like the moment before lightning strikes. The symbols on the handle seemed to pulse with their own light. Marcus reached out carefully and picked up the sword by the handle. Nothing happened. The weapon was heavier than it looked, but it felt balanced in his hand. The glow in the blade seemed to get a little brighter when he held it, but it did not burn him or shock him. It was just a sword. He slipped it into his equipment pack and went back to Lyrelai. She watched him with an expression he could not read. You touched it, she said quietly. Yes, is that a problem? She did not answer. But Marcus saw something in her eyes that had not been there before. Something that might have been fear. They walked slowly through the jungle toward his extraction point. Lyrelai leaned heavily on his shoulder, but she kept walking. Behind them, smoke still rose from the mysterious battlefield. Above them, the alien sun of Valdris Prime began to set, casting long shadows through the trees. Marcus did not know it yet, but picking up that sword had changed everything, not just for him, but for the entire war between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire. Some changes start small, with one person deciding to help another. This was one of those changes, and in 3 days, when Commander Lyrelai was strong enough to sit up in his ship's medical bay, the real surprises would begin. The medical bay of the human transport ship was small and clean. White walls, bright lights, and the quiet hum of machines keeping watch over their patients. Commander Lyrelai had been unconscious for 2 days. Now she sat up in the medical bed, her crystal skin looking healthier but still showing cracks from her injuries. Marcus watched her from across the room. He had visited her every day since bringing her aboard. At first, it was just to check on her medical condition. Now he was not sure why he kept coming back. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else. Dr. Sarah Kim finished checking Lyrelai's vital signs and made notes on her tablet. She is healing faster than I expected, she told Marcus quietly. Alien biology is amazing. Those wounds should have taken weeks to close up. Lyrelai turned her head toward them. Her star-bright eyes focused on Marcus. You saved my life, she said. Her English was getting better each day. Why? We have talked about this before, Marcus said. You needed help. But I am your enemy. Marcus shrugged. You were hurt. That made you a patient, not an enemy. Lyrelai studied his face for a long time. Then she looked around the medical bay. Where are we going? Station 7, Dr. Kim answered. It has better medical facilities and... She paused, looking uncomfortable. And a proper detention center, Marcus finished. He had been dreading this conversation. Something flickered across Lyrelai's face. Not fear exactly, but resignation. I understand. I am a prisoner of war. You will be treated well, Marcus said quickly. Earth Command has rules about prisoners. You will have food, medical care, protection. And my sword? She asked. Marcus had almost forgotten about the weapon. It was locked in his personal storage compartment, along with the rest of his equipment from the mission. He had not looked at it since that day in the jungle. I have it, he said. I thought, when you are well enough, I should return it to you. Lyrelai's eyes went wide. You still have it? After 3 days. Of course. It belongs to you. She sat up straighter in the medical bed. Her hands were shaking slightly. Bring it here, she said, please. I need to see something. Dr. Kim looked uncertain. I do not think we should bring weapons into the medical bay. Please, Lyrelai said again. It is important. Marcus looked between the two women. Finally, he nodded. I will get it. His storage compartment was just down the hall from the medical bay. Marcus opened it and saw the sword lying on top of his other gear. In the artificial light of the ship, it did not look as impressive as it had in the jungle. The glow was dimmer, and the symbols on the handle were barely visible. But as soon as he picked it up, things changed. The moment his bare hand touched the handle, pain shot up his arm. Not the sharp pain of an electric shock, but something deeper, something that felt like fire burning inside his bones. The sword's glow became brighter, much brighter. The symbols on the handle blazed with golden light. Marcus gritted his teeth and held on. The pain was bad, but it was bearable. More than that, something inside the weapon seemed to be reaching out to him, like it was trying to tell him something important. He carried the sword back to the medical bay, his arm aching with each step. Dr. Kim was checking some readings on her machines. Lyrelei was sitting very still, watching the door with an expression of intense focus. When Marcus walked in carrying the glowing sword, Lyrelei made a sound like a gasp and a sob mixed together. Dr. Kim spun around and stared. "How is that possible?" Lyrelei whispered. "How is what possible?" Marcus asked. The pain in his arm was getting worse, but he tried not to show it. "You are holding it," she said. "You are holding the flame of eternity, and you are not dead." Dr. Kim stepped closer, her medical scanner in her hand. The energy readings from that weapon just spiked to dangerous levels. "Marcus, put it down." "No," Lyrelei said sharply. "Do not put it down. Not yet." She looked directly at Marcus. "Tell me truly. Does it hurt?" Marcus nodded. "Like my arm is on fire. But you can hold it?" "Yes." Lyrelei closed her eyes and spoke something in her own language. It sounded like a prayer or maybe a curse. When she opened her eyes again, they were bright with unshed tears. "This is impossible," she said in English. "No one but the chosen of the eternal flame can touch that sword. Anyone else who tried—" She shuddered. "I have seen warriors reduced to ash in seconds." "What does that mean?" Dr. Kim asked. "The chosen of what?" Lyrelei looked at Marcus with an expression of wonder and terror. "It means he carries the mark," she said. "It means everything we know about this war is wrong." Marcus set the sword down on a nearby table. The moment he let go, the pain stopped. The glow faded back to its dim level, but the symbols on the handle continued to pulse softly. "I do not understand," he said. Lyrelei was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very soft. "That sword has been in my family for 1,000 years. It was forged in the heart of our sun by the first masters of the eternal flame. Only those blessed by the ancient powers can wield it without being destroyed." She paused and looked at him again. "You held it for several minutes. That should be impossible. According to everything my people believe, humans are young and weak. You have no connection to the spiritual forces that govern the galaxy." "Maybe your people are wrong," Dr. Kim suggested. "That is what terrifies me," Lyrelei said. "If they are wrong about this, what else are they wrong about?" Marcus picked up the sword again. The pain came back immediately, but he was getting used to it. "Tell me about the mark," he said. "What does it mean?" Lyrelei's hands twisted in her lap. "Ancient stories speak of beings who could channel the eternal flame itself. Warriors who could stand against the darkness that comes from beyond the stars. We called them the final guardians." "And you think I am one of these guardians?" "I think you carry their blood," she said. "Or their spirit. I do not know how, but the sword recognizes something in you that it recognizes in no one else." Dr. Kim was scanning the sword with her instruments. "The energy pattern is unlike anything in our databases," she said. "But it is not random. There is a structure to it, like a language." "It is a language," Lyrelei confirmed. "The language of creation itself. The symbols on the handle spell out the name of the first guardian, the one who forged the sword. His name was—" She spoke a word in her own language that sounded like music and thunder combined. "What happened to these guardians?" Marcus asked. Lyrelei's face went dark. "They disappeared. Long ago, when the first darkness threatened our worlds, they fought and won. But the victory cost them everything. They faded away, leaving only legends and prophecies behind." "Prophecies about what?" "About the return of the darkness," she said quietly. "And about the return of the guardians to fight it." Marcus looked down at the sword in his hands. The symbols were glowing brighter now, as if responding to their conversation. "You think the darkness is coming back?" Lyrelei nodded slowly. "I think it is already here. The battle where you found me, we were not fighting humans. We were fighting something else. Something that destroyed my warriors with weapons I had never seen before." Dr. Kim looked between them. "Are you saying there is a third party in this war?" "I am saying," Lyrelei replied, "that this war between our peoples may be the least of our problems." The three of them stood in silence. looking at the glowing sword. Outside the medical bay, the ship continued its journey to Station 7. In a few hours, Marcus would have to report to his commanding officer. He would have to explain why he had helped an enemy soldier and brought her aboard. But now he had bigger questions to worry about. If Lyrelei was right, if he really did carry some ancient power, then everything was about to change. For him, for the war, and possibly for the entire galaxy. The sword pulsed once more in his hands, and Marcus had the strange feeling that it approved of his thoughts. Whatever was coming, he would be ready to face it, even if he had no idea what that meant. Station 7 was massive. The military outpost hung in space like a metal city, its lights twinkling against the stars. As their transport ship moved toward the docking bay, Marcus watched through the small window in the medical bay. Soon he would have to face questions he was not ready to answer. Commander Lyrelei sat beside him, her hands bound with energy restraints. The restraints were a requirement for all enemy prisoners, but Marcus had made sure they were set to the lowest power level. They would hold her, but they would not hurt her. "You are worried," she observed, watching his reflection in the window. "A little," Marcus admitted. "My commanding officer is going to want explanations." "What will you tell him about the sword?" Marcus touched his equipment pack where the weapon was secured. He had been carrying it for 5 days now, and the pain when he held it was getting less intense. Sometimes he thought he could hear it humming quietly, like a song just below the edge of hearing. "I do not know," he said honestly. Dr. Kim finished packing her medical equipment. "I have prepared a full report on your injuries and recovery," she told Lyrelei. "The doctors here will take good care of you." Lyrelei nodded politely, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. Whatever was waiting for her on Station 7, she was afraid of it. The docking procedures took an hour. When they were finally cleared to disembark, a security team was waiting for them. 6 human soldiers in full armor, led by a stern-faced woman with Major's insignia. "Captain Chen," the Major said briskly, "I am Major Santos, Station Security. I am here to escort the prisoner to the detention level." "She needs continued medical monitoring," Dr. Kim protested. "Her injuries are still healing." "Our medical staff has been briefed," Major Santos replied. "The prisoner will receive appropriate care." Marcus helped Lyrelei stand. She was much stronger now, but still moved carefully. As the security team surrounded her, she looked back at him. "Remember what I told you about the sword," she said quietly, "and be careful who you trust with that knowledge." Then the security team led her away, and Marcus was alone with Dr. Kim in the docking bay. "Report to Admiral Reyes immediately," one of the remaining soldiers told Marcus. Deck 7 Command Section. Marcus had never met Admiral Reyes personally, but he knew the man's reputation. Hard, smart, and completely dedicated to winning the war against the Zephyrian Empire. This was not going to be a pleasant conversation. The command section of Station 7 was a maze of corridors and briefing rooms. Marcus found Admiral Reyes in a large office overlooking the main docking bay. The Admiral was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands that spoke of many years in combat. "Captain Chen," the Admiral said without looking up from his desk. "Sit down." Marcus sat in the chair across from the desk and waited. Admiral Reyes finished reading something on his tablet, then finally looked up. "You brought an enemy officer aboard your ship," the Admiral said. "It was not a question." "Yes, sir. She was wounded and needed medical attention. And you did this without authorization." "The situation required immediate action, sir. She would have died if I had waited for orders." Admiral Reyes leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about this Zephyrian officer. Major Santos says she is someone important." "Commander Lyrelei of the Third Flame," Marcus reported. "She claims to be from the House of the Morning Star, daughter of something called the High Temple." "Claims to be?" "She had the armor and bearing of a high-ranking officer, sir. And she carried an unusual weapon." The Admiral's eyes sharpened. "What kind of weapon?" Marcus hesitated. This was the moment he had been dreading. "A ceremonial sword, sir. Some kind of energy blade with religious markings." "Where is this weapon now?" "In my possession, sir. I secured it as potential intelligence material." Admiral Reyes stood up and walked to the window. For a long moment he looked out at the stars. "Captain, there are things about this war that are classified above your security level. Things that make unusual Zephyrian weapons very interesting to our intelligence services." He turned back to Marcus. "I want you to bring me this sword now." Marcus felt a chill in his stomach. "Sir, I should mention that the weapon seems to be Active. It produces energy readings that could be dangerous. I will be the judge of that, the Admiral said firmly. Marcus had no choice. He opened his equipment pack and carefully removed the sword. In the bright lights of the Admiral's office, it looked even more beautiful than before. The curved blade caught the light and threw it back in complex patterns. The symbols on the handle pulsed softly with golden fire. Admiral Reyes reached for the weapon. Let me see that. Sir, wait, Marcus said quickly. There may be some kind of security system built into it. When I handle it, it causes significant pain. For someone not authorized to use it, the effect might be much worse. The Admiral paused with his hand halfway to the sword. What do you mean, authorized? Marcus took a deep breath. There was no going back now. According to the prisoner, this weapon can only be handled by certain individuals. She seemed very surprised that I could touch it at all. Show me. Marcus picked up the sword. Immediately, the familiar pain shot up his arm. The blade's glow became much brighter and the symbols on the handle blazed with light. But he held it steady, enduring the burning sensation. Admiral Reyes stared at the glowing weapon. How long can you hold it like that? As long as necessary, sir. The pain is manageable. The Admiral sat down heavily in his chair. Captain, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. The reason we are so interested in unusual Zephyrian technology is that we have recently discovered something disturbing about this war. He paused and activated a privacy screen around his office. The windows went dark, and Marcus could feel the subtle hum of electronic shielding. 3 weeks ago, the Admiral continued, we intercepted a series of Zephyrian military communications. Our translation AI has been working on them ever since. What we learned changes everything we thought we knew about why the Zephyrians are attacking human colonies. Marcus waited, the sword still glowing in his hands. They are not trying to conquer us, Admiral Reyes said quietly. They are running from something. Something that has been destroying worlds at the edge of their territory for the past 2 years. Running from what, sir? We are not entirely sure. The Zephyrian communications refer to it as the silence, or the hunger that devours stars. Whatever it is, it has wiped out over 30 Zephyrian worlds completely. Not conquered. Destroyed. Turned into lifeless rocks floating in space. Marcus felt the sword pulse in his hands, as if it was reacting to the Admiral's words. And they think human space is safer? They think human space is empty, the Admiral replied. Most of their communications suggest they believed our worlds were uninhabited. They were trying to evacuate their people to what they thought were unused planets. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The entire war has been a misunderstanding. A deadly misunderstanding that has cost thousands of lives on both sides, Admiral Reyes confirmed. But it gets worse. According to the communications, this silence is not a natural disaster. It is some kind of hostile force, and it is moving toward the core systems of both our civilizations. Marcus thought about what Lirelai had told him about the battle where he found her, about enemies that were not human, about ancient prophecies and returning darkness. Sir, he said slowly, I think the prisoner knows more about this than she initially told me. She mentioned something about fighting forces that were not human in the battle where I found her. Admiral Reyes leaned forward. What exactly did she say? Marcus repeated Lirelai's words about the mysterious attackers and her references to ancient prophecies. As he spoke, the sword in his hands grew brighter, the symbols pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. When he finished, the Admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he reached for his communication panel. Major Santos, I want the Zephyrian prisoner brought to Briefing Room Alpha immediately, and I want our best xenolinguist and our chief intelligence officer present. He paused. This is priority 1. He looked back at Marcus. Captain, you are about to become involved in something much larger than a war between 2 species. If your prisoner is right about ancient threats and prophetic guardians, then that sword you are holding may be more than just a weapon. What do you mean, sir? I mean it might be the key to saving both our civilizations, Admiral Reyes said grimly. Assuming we can figure out how to use it before whatever destroyed 30 Zephyrian worlds comes for us next. The sword pulsed once more in Marcus's hands, and he had the distinct feeling that it was ready for whatever was coming. The question was whether he was ready for it too. The briefing room was tense with waiting. Admiral Reyes sat at the head of the table, flanked by his senior staff. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's chief xenolinguist, reviewed her notes on Zephyrian culture and language. Commander Torres from Intelligence had a stack of decoded communications spread in front of him. And Marcus sat quietly in the corner, the glowing sword laid carefully on the table before him. When Major Santos brought Commander Lyrelay into the room, Marcus could see the change in her immediately. 3 days in detention had not broken her spirit, but it had made her more cautious. Her star-bright eyes swept the room, taking in each face, each detail. "Please sit down, Commander," Admiral Reyes said politely, indicating a chair across from him. Lyrelay sat with fluid grace, her bound hands resting in her lap. "You wish to interrogate me now?" she asked calmly. "I wish to talk with you," the Admiral replied, "about threats that may be more important than the war between our peoples." Something flickered in Lyrelay's eyes. "What threats?" Commander Torres slid a tablet across the table to her. "These are intercepted communications from your military command. Dr. Vasquez has translated them. I think you should read them." Lyrelay looked down at the tablet and Marcus watched her face change. First confusion, then recognition, then something that might have been fear. "Where did you get these?" she asked quietly. "From the same deep space monitoring stations that have been tracking the destruction of your outer rim worlds," Admiral Reyes said. "We know about the 30 planets that have gone silent. We know your people are fleeing toward human space. What we do not know is what you are fleeing from." Lyrelay was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You would not believe me if I told you?" "Try us," Dr. Vasquez said gently. Lyrelay looked around the room again, her gaze lingering on Marcus and the sword. "My people have legends," she began slowly. "Stories from the time before our civilization reached the stars. They speak of a great darkness that once consumed worlds, turning them into empty shells drifting in space." She paused and took a shaky breath. "The stories say that this darkness was not a force of nature. It was something alive, something hungry, and it fed on the life force of entire planets." "What happened to it?" Commander Torres asked. "According to the legends, it was defeated by the first Guardians, warriors who could channel the power of creation itself. They drove the darkness back to the void between galaxies and sealed it there with weapons forged from starfire." Admiral Reyes leaned forward. "And you think this darkness has returned?" "I know it has," Lyrelay said firmly. 2 years ago, our deep space scouts detected energy signatures at the edge of the galaxy. Signatures that matched the descriptions in our oldest archives. Then the attacks began. She gestured toward the tablet with the communications. "What your translators cannot tell you is the true meaning behind these messages. My people are not just fleeing. We are running in terror from something our ancestors thought was gone forever." Dr. Vasquez frowned at her notes. "The communications mention void devourers several times. Is that what you call this threat?" Lyrelay nodded. "In our language, the term means those who consume the light of stars. They do not conquer worlds. They drain them completely. Every living thing dies. Every source of energy is absorbed. What remains is a dead rock with no atmosphere, no magnetic field, no warmth." "How do they do this?" Commander Torres asked. "We do not know," Lyrelay admitted. "Our sensors detect massive energy discharges, but no ships, no weapons we can understand. Sometimes entire fleets disappear investigating the affected systems. The only evidence they were ever there is empty space and debris." Marcus had been listening quietly, but now he spoke up. "What about the battle where I found you? You said you were not fighting humans." Lyrelay's hands clenched in her restraints. "My warriors and I were sent to investigate energy readings on Valdris Prime. Readings that matched the Void Devourer signatures. When we arrived, we found—" She stopped and shuddered. "Found what?" Admiral Reyes prompted. "Shadows," she said finally. "Living shadows that moved like liquid darkness. They had no fixed shape, but they wielded weapons of pure entropy. Everything they touched began to decay instantly." She looked directly at Marcus. "My warriors died screaming as their bodies simply fell apart. I survived only because I carried the flame of eternity, and its power held the shadows at bay for a few minutes. Long enough for me to escape into the jungle." The room was silent as everyone processed this information. Finally, Dr. Vasquez spoke up. "These first Guardians mentioned in your legends," she said carefully. "What do the stories say about them? How were they identified?" Lyrelay's gaze moved to the sword on the table. Its symbols were pulsing brighter now, responding to the conversation. They were chosen by the eternal flame itself. Only those blessed by the ancient powers could wield the sacred weapons without being destroyed. She paused and looked at Marcus. According to our prophecies, the Guardians would return when the darkness rose again. They would be found in the most unlikely places, among peoples who seem to have no connection to the spiritual forces of the galaxy. Admiral Reyes followed her gaze to Marcus. You are saying that Captain Chen might be one of these prophetic guardians? I am saying that he can hold a weapon that should have killed him instantly, Lyra Lee replied. I am saying that the flame of eternity recognizes something in him that it has not recognized in 1,000 years. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the briefing room in red, and Admiral Reyes's communication panel lit up with urgent signals. Admiral, came a voice over the intercom. We have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Zephyrian configuration, but the energy signatures are off the charts. Admiral Reyes activated the room's main display screen. The view showed the space around Station 7, where 6 elegant Zephyrian ships had appeared. But these were not the usual sleek warships Marcus had seen in battle. These vessels were larger, more complex, covered in the same flowing patterns he had seen on Lyrelai's armor. Temple ships, Lyrelai breathed, the sacred fleet of the High Orders. They are demanding to speak with whoever holds the flame of eternity, the voice on the intercom continued. Admiral, they are not responding to our standard protocols. They keep asking for something called the Flame Bearer. All eyes in the room turned to Marcus. The sword on the table was now glowing so brightly that it cast shadows on the walls. The symbols along its handle blazed like miniature suns. It appears, Admiral Reyes said grimly, that word of your unique ability has spread beyond this station. Lyrelai was staring at the display screen with an expression of awe and terror. The sacred fleet has not left the core systems in 3 centuries, she whispered. If they are here, it means the High Temple has issued a mandate of recognition. What does that mean? Dr. Vasquez asked. It means, Lyrelai said slowly, that they believe they have found one of the prophesied guardians, and they are here to either bow before him or destroy him, depending on whether he proves worthy. The alarms continued to blare, and Marcus could feel the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back to his old life as a simple medic and soldier. The sword in front of him pulsed once more as if agreeing with his thoughts. Outside, 6 ships waited for his answer to questions he was only beginning to understand. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient enemies stirred, sensing that their greatest foes had returned to the galaxy. The real test was about to begin. The main docking bay of Station 7 had been cleared of all personnel except essential security. Admiral Reyes stood with his senior staff behind energy barriers, watching as the Zephyrian delegation approached. Marcus walked beside them, the flame of eternity sword secured across his back. Its glow was visible even through the weapon's wrapping. Commander Lyra Lee walked on his other side, her restraints removed at her own request. They must see that I come freely, she had explained. Otherwise, they will consider you an enemy who captured me. The Zephyrian delegation was unlike anything Marcus had seen before. 3 figures moved across the docking bay with fluid grace, their crystal-like skin reflecting the station's lights in rainbow patterns. Their armor was not the practical gear of soldiers, but elaborate ceremonial dress covered in flowing designs and precious metals. The figure in the center was clearly the leader. Taller than the others, with skin that seemed to shine with its own inner light. Ancient symbols were carved directly into the crystal of his forehead, and his eyes glowed like stars. When they reached the center of the docking bay, all 3 Zephyrians stopped and looked directly at Marcus. The leader said something in their musical language, and Lyrelai translated quietly. High Templar Ethan of the Sacred Order greets the one who bears the flame, she whispered. He asks to see proof of your worthiness. Marcus looked at Admiral Reyes, who nodded grimly. Slowly, Marcus unwrapped the sword and held it out for the delegation to see. The moment the weapon was fully revealed, all 3 Zephyrians dropped to one knee and pressed their foreheads to the deck. The leader, High Templar Ethan, spoke again in their language, his voice filled with what sounded like awe and terror. He says the flame burns brighter than it has for 1,000 years, Lyrelai translated. He says the prophecies are fulfilled and the final guardian has come. But then Ethan raised his head and spoke again, his tone changing to something more challenging. What is he saying now? Admiral Reyes asked. Lyrelai's face went pale. He says that bearing the flame is not enough. To truly be the Guardian, you must prove you can master its full power and... She stopped, looking stricken. And what? Marcus prompted. And you must choose whether to accept the burden of what you are, or die as an unworthy pretender. The High Templar stood and drew his own weapon, a staff topped with a crystal that blazed with cold fire. He spoke again, and this time his meaning was clear even without translation. This was a challenge. He wants to fight me? Marcus asked. He wants to test you, Lyrelai corrected. If you can channel the flame's true power, you will survive. If you cannot... She did not finish the sentence. Admiral Reyes stepped forward. Captain Chen is under the protection of the Terran Expeditionary Force. Any attack on him will be considered an act of war. High Templar Ethan looked at the Admiral and spoke a single word. Even Marcus, who knew no Zephyrian, understood its meaning. The word was no. The testing is beyond the laws of your people or mine, Lyrelai explained. It is a cosmic requirement. The flame itself demands proof of worthiness. Marcus looked down at the sword in his hands. For weeks now, holding it had caused him pain. He had endured that pain because he thought it was temporary, a side effect that would fade with time. Now he was beginning to understand that the pain was just the beginning. What happens if I pass this test? He asked Lyrelai. You become what you were born to be, she said softly. The guardian who can stand against the void devourers. The warrior who can save both our civilizations. And if I fail, the flame consumes you and we all die when the darkness arrives. High Templar Ethan raised his staff and energy began to gather around its crystal tip. The other Zephyrians stepped back, giving the two fighters space. Around the docking bay, human security personnel gripped their weapons nervously. But Admiral Reyes held up a hand to stop them from interfering. Marcus raised the flame of eternity, and immediately the familiar pain shot through his arm. But this time he did not try to endure it. Instead, he opened himself to it, letting the burning sensation flow through his entire body. The change was immediate and overwhelming. The sword's blade erupted in golden fire that reached toward the ceiling of the docking bay. The symbols along its handle blazed so brightly that they left afterimages in Marcus's vision. And inside his mind he could hear something vast and ancient awakening. High Templar Ethan attacked without warning, his staff launching a bolt of coherent energy toward Marcus's chest. Without thinking, Marcus raised the sword to block, and the golden flame around its blade absorbed the attack completely. The Templar pressed his assault, moving with inhuman speed and grace. His staff spun and thrust, creating shields of crystalline energy and launching projectiles of pure force. But Marcus found himself moving to match him, the sword in his hand seeming to guide his actions. As they fought, Marcus began to understand what was happening to him. The pain he had been feeling was not the sword hurting him. It was his human body slowly adapting to contain power that was never meant for mortals. Each time he held the weapon, he became a little less human and a little more something else, something that could stand against the darkness between stars. The battle intensified, both fighters moving faster than human eyes could follow. Energy crackled between them, and the deck plates of the docking bay began to glow from the heat. But Marcus was no longer just defending. The sword was teaching him, showing him techniques and abilities that had been lost for millennia. With a final surge of golden flame, Marcus shattered the Templar's energy shield and pressed the point of his blade against the alien's throat. For a moment, the two warriors stood frozen, both breathing heavily. Then High Templar Ethan smiled and spoke a single word in his own language. This time Marcus understood it without translation. The word was worthy. The Templar stepped back and knelt again, this time joined by every Zephyrian in the docking bay. Behind the energy barriers, Admiral Reyes and his staff watched in stunned silence. But before anyone could speak, new alarms began sounding throughout the station. This time the alerts were different. More urgent, more desperate. Admiral, came a voice over the intercom. We have massive energy signatures appearing at the edge of the system. The readings match the Void Devourer descriptions from the Zephyrian communications. Admiral Reyes activated his portable display unit, and the image that appeared made everyone in the docking bay go silent. At the edge of the star system, space itself seemed to be twisting and darkening. Reality was bending around something that should not exist, something that hurt to look at directly. How long until it reaches the inhabited worlds? Admiral Reyes asked. At current speed of approach, 6 hours, came the reply. Admiral, we are detecting energy drains in the outer system. 3 mining stations have already gone dark. Marcus looked at the approaching darkness, then at the sword in his hands. The golden flames around its blade were growing brighter, as if responding to the presence of its ancient enemy. "I have to go," he said quietly. Lorelei stepped closer to him. "If you do this, if you fully accept what you are becoming, you can never return to your old life. The power will change you completely. You will become something beyond human understanding. And if I do not do it, then everything dies," she said simply. Marcus thought about his squad mates, about the people on the civilian stations in this system, about all the worlds that would fall if the Void Devourers were not stopped. He thought about the life he was giving up, the simple existence of a soldier and medic that he would never have again. Then he thought about the alternative. "Admiral," he said, turning to face his commanding officer, "I request permission to take a ship and engage the enemy." Admiral Reyes looked at him for a long moment. "Permission granted," he said finally. "And Captain, good luck." High Templar Ethon approached Marcus and spoke to him directly. This time Marcus found he could understand the musical language without Lorelai's help. "The Sacred Fleet will follow you into battle, Flamebearer," the Templar said. "We have waited 1,000 years for this day." "And the human fleet?" Marcus asked Admiral Reyes. "We'll be right behind you," the Admiral promised. "Both our peoples together, for the first time in this war." Marcus nodded and walked toward the docking bay's exit, where a fast interceptor was being prepared for launch. Behind him he could hear the bustle of activity as both human and Zephyrian crews prepared for battle. As he climbed into the pilot's seat, Marcus felt the sword pulse against his back. The pain was almost gone now, replaced by something that felt like purpose, like destiny. In the darkness ahead, ancient enemies waited. But for the first time in 1,000 years, they would face a guardian who was ready for them. The real war was about to begin. And this time humanity would not fight alone.